All right, folks, let's get to it on a week 7 for college football. We saw West Virginia get past Baylor last night, 43-40. A couple games going on tonight, but the big ones, of course, starting at noon Eastern time on Saturday. We want to talk it up here at the Voice of College Football. Let's go a rapid fire, bring the heat. Let's go knock out the phone calls, the conversations on week 7. Of course, I need to do my part, get the link to you in the comments section. Of course, we will do that right now. We just wrapped up our 41st edition of West Virginia Mountaineers Live, and it would be tremendous if anybody watching us right now, and for those of you that will be watching on the replay, that you would get on over to the West Virginia channel and please subscribe to help us grow our network. Our West Virginia channel is about 300 subs shy of 1,000. 1,000 is the magic number, as we have explained many times. So get on over to the West Virginia channel and please subscribe there. Appreciate all of you who have helped us build up the network to 1,000 subs on a number of channels. I don't know what the count is, but it's about 15 or 16 channels at 1,000 subs. So thank you so much for that, including 37K here at the Voice of College Football, although we're not growing much here during the football season. We seem to grow as much during the off season as we do during the football season, whatever that means, which I'm glad that we've got a base of people that stay with us during the off season as we talk college football. LBC Trojan, I know that's the highest of compliments, but let's not go there. That is GOAT status. That is not worthy of me. But I do my best covering college football. I could certainly cover college football, talk better college football than EP. I guarantee that. Absolutely. All right. So we've dropped the link in the chat. And again, we are looking for a rapid fire show here. A nice tight Week 7 preview. All right, David's here. Ben's here. It's just me, Tim79, here. Nate's here. Nate, Mark Rogers, so consistent with vids and streams. We do our best. We do our best. We will do better, though. The quality needs to be better. It will be. Yes, finishing up the other stream. Thank you, Ben, for explaining to everyone. We tend to go a little long on those live streams. Well, I was challenging Mike, the West Virginia fans tonight, for having a mostly sparse and empty upper deck at the game last night against Baylor. Shame on them. 45,000 in a 65,000 seat stadium, something like that. Who else is on the line? Let's see. Mike says, I think somebody's a top 3 running back nationally, but Harbaugh is just the next in a long line of Michigan coaches who like to run first, run second, and pass third. Must be talking about Blake Corum. We have posted so much Michigan content this week. Goodness. Are you kidding me? I did a Michigan-Penn State preview. Thank you for watching that. We did a Michigan discussion with Justin Rowe from Blue by 90. And then, of course, we've got all the Michigan content over on the Michigan channel. So check it out. We will have two separate post games of the Michigan-Penn State game. So get that. If you want the Penn State side, we've got the Penn State side with our boys from Black Shoe Diaries. So you can catch that right here on the main channel. If you want the Penn State look, if you want to talk Michigan after the Michigan-Penn State game, get on over to the Michigan channel and talk up the Wolverines there. And then, of course, our array of post-game shows coming up tomorrow. So we will have our schedule. It will be posted on the community page, our Nebraska post, USC post, Oklahoma post, Texas post, and on and on and on and on and on. We hope to add Florida State on Saturday as well. Yes, Nate, good to see you. David likes the Michigan uniforms with the standard and black cleats with white tape like Anthony Carter. Don't know if any of you remember him. David wants me to start reciting stats of Anthony Carter, Minnesota Vikings. Appreciate Tim being here, of course. One of our very finest post-game shows, of course, with Tim, Tony, and Rick. USC, Utah, huge game in the Pac-12 tomorrow. What time is that game? Is that a 3:30 game? Is that a night game? That sounds like a night game. Who's got the Utah USC game? Let's go to the schedule. Tim and Rick were probably all over me last night if they heard me name 5 other games that were in my top 5 of the week, and I didn't list USC and Utah. That's a Fox game at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Okay. What's wrong with Iowa? What has been wrong with Iowa for 15 years? It's the same thing now. Mike, we are glad that you made it through surgery. Hope everything's good. You are too kind. Too kind, Rick. David, how many TVs will you have working for the game? You know, I had a friend who put me to shame. He sent me his setup and said something like, how does this compare to the Voice of College Football headquarters? And he showed me his, I think he's got about 3 screens, but you know, they're probably, I don't know, maybe a 60-inch flanked by a couple 42 inches probably on each side, and had his setup. Mine's a bit more sporadically thrown together here. We're kind of in a holding pattern in terms of our residency right now, so we hope to get somewhere more established here at some point. I don't know when that's going to be exactly. That could be in a month. That could be in a year. Hopefully it's nothing in beyond that. But let's see, how many screens? Well, we've got, so the 2 screens that I was using at my former house, I don't even have set up. I've just basically used my 2 laptops in addition to my 55-inch there. So basically 3 screens. It doesn't do me any good, even though I still will test my ability to take in this amount of information by setting up maybe Phil Steele does like 12 screens. I think I could handle like maybe 3 times 3, maybe 9. Maybe do a wall with 9 screens, or maybe something like 1 in the middle, 1, 2, 3 on the sides. That would be 7. Maybe we could go with 7 with like a 60-inch in the middle, at least a 60-inch, whatever they make now. I don't know how high they go, but a mammoth screen in the middle, and then maybe 40-some inch, 46-inch screens, and we would go 7. But I don't even know if that's going to do me any good, because the 3rd screen gets ignored. I can only take in 2 games at the same time. I've tried to watch like 4 games at the same time, and then I find myself at the end of that 3-hour window, I can't comment on any one of the 4. I basically have done myself no good, because I can't really give any kind of analysis on any of the 4. It's just too much stimulus. All right, first call of the night. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, I'm Tristar. Second-time caller. I called a couple of weeks ago. I missed your show on Tuesday, where I was gonna ask you about your top 25 that actually makes sense.
Love
so
it.
I was going to call, so I missed that.
Okay.
My question to you is, so you have Tulane now above Kansas State. I'm just wondering, like, what switched for you from last week to this week?
So I would have to go back and look at all the various results, but here's the issue. The issue is I've been doing this about 5 years, and I have always honored head to head, as long as the records, of course, are comparable. I have honored the head to head because I believe that that's what matters. That's why we're playing the game. So if you get two teams and they're both 5-1, that the team that won the game should be ranked higher than the other. Of course, we get into certain circumstances, especially in the SEC Western Division, where A beat B and B beat C, but C beat A, and then you throw that out and just say, okay, well, I can't honor the head-to-head anymore because we've got too many cross results there. So I've always honored that. However, I got to a point a few weeks ago, once Tulane beat Kansas State, and I looked at it, I thought, okay, this is impacting way too many other teams. And maybe it was because they are in the lower 5 to 10 of the top 25, because I liken it to when Oregon beat Ohio State last year. And I thought, okay, well, I'm certainly going to rank Oregon ahead of Ohio State. But then Oregon lost to Stanford. Well, they still had the head-to-head, and they had the same record. Even though I don't think that their resume was as good as Ohio State's at that point, I still ranked them ahead. And it really didn't affect much because until Oregon lost a second game, they were still legitimately a top 10 team, and it didn't affect much. But I just recognized a few weeks ago, okay, there's a lot of collateral impact here. And so to rank all these teams behind Tulane, just because Tulane beat Kansas State, for as much as I want to honor that result, I've got to rank all these teams behind Tulane, and it's messing up my system because basically I am calculating their resumes to be better than Kansas, or to be better than Tulane's, but not as good as Kansas State. So that's the first time I really hit that level of a quandary. And it's probably one of the reasons is it's probably one of the first times, at least during the time that I've done this, that a group of 5 has defeated that good of a Power 5 for that to become an issue with a bunch of other teams. But then a bunch of those other teams lost, and their resumes then determined that I could honor the head-to-head a week or 2 weeks later. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
Minnesota lost, and a bunch of teams in that range lost. Arkansas, Texas A&M, a lot of teams got wiped out. Yeah,
because I asked the question to you like a week before, and you had it vice versa. So then I was wondering what switched.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
So I was listening to someone who was talking about the whole Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State situation. I'm a Michigan fan, by the way. Yeah. And they were saying how neither team, Michigan or Penn State, can afford to lose this game. But I just, for fun, did the scenario of, let's just say each team beat each other, right? Yep. Sure. I looked at the tiebreakers, and in all likelihood, if that were to happen, the tiebreaker would lean to Penn State, because Penn State has Purdue and Minnesota as their cross-divisional games, who are probably the top 2 teams on the other side. Yep. So I was just curious, let's just say we get down to Michigan, Ohio State at the end of the year, and let's say Michigan wins tomorrow, but then at the end of the year, we have Ohio State beat Michigan. So how do you think the committee would look at it? Because, I mean, most people would think, like, we're all building towards this big Michigan-Ohio State showdown. But if Penn State were to be the team to make the Big Ten title, even though people might assume that Michigan and Ohio State were better, how do you think, like, the committee would judge all that, I guess, is my question.
before we get to that, Tree Star, I want to thank you for calling me about your top 25 that actually makes sense question, because that's the way it should work right there. You had an issue with it. Maybe you still have an issue with it, and that's fine. So I appreciate you calling and us discussing it, and you not just saying I'm an idiot and refusing to talk to me. So thank you for that. So in our scenario, Michigan wins tomorrow. Penn State beats Ohio State. Ohio State beats Michigan. So they're all 11-1. They're all 8-1 in the Big Ten. Okay. So you have determined, I haven't looked at this in a long time, but you're telling me that obviously they're all going to have the same division record, and some of those tiebreakers are just automatically, since they beat each other and they beat everyone else, it's going to go to some kind of even common opponents are going to be the same, because they all just lost the one game to each other. So you're saying it's going to come down to who has the strength of schedule in the Western Division, and that's going to be Penn State. Gotcha. Okay, so now you're asking about the committee in a situation where Penn State wins the Big Ten championship and they're 12-1, and Ohio State and Michigan are 11-1, and who in the world is going to make the playoff? So how would they determine between Ohio State and Michigan? Well, I think we've got our easy answer that Ohio State won the game.
Yeah. Right? Would you just assume that they would pick Penn State to make it though? Like, or do you think it would be possible, like in a situation like 2016 where they took Ohio State over Penn State? Do you think they would still go with Penn State in this case, or do you think they would pick Ohio State?
Well, the issue in 2016, of course, was that Penn State lost an out-of-conference game.
Sure, but let's say like Ohio State were to like just destroy Michigan, right? And they seem to be better. Do you think they would? And I'm like, I mean, at this point, if you look at their resume, it's basically Penn State would have just gotten into the Big Ten championship based out of luck, of like strength of schedule luck. Do you think like the committee would look at that and say, oh, we still got to honor Penn State winning the conference? Or would they say like, oh, it's all lucky and Ohio State's the best team, let's just put them in there?
So originally I thought your question was, who would they include with Penn State? But you're talking about knocking Penn State out?
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asking.
If the committee, considering that Penn State would have beaten Ohio State head-to-head, correct? Won the division, won the Big Ten championship, which also adds to its strength of schedule, of course, with another game against Minnesota, Purdue, Illinois. The only thing I can say is if the committee is that pathetic in its reasoning, then I'm going to be here flipping tables and going crazy and smashing things, and I will not be able to shut up about it.
Okay, what if say Penn State wins tomorrow and Michigan wins the final game, but like say it's like an Oregon Ohio State situation where for the rest of the season after the game tomorrow, Michigan looks like a far better team. Let's say Penn State loses to Ohio State by 35 points.
Yep.
And then Michigan beats Ohio State by 30 points. But Penn State gets in because of their strength of record from the other side of the division, and because they beat Michigan. Let's say they beat Michigan tomorrow by like a fluke, like it goes to overtime, something like
JJ McCarthy gets knocked out in the first quarter.
Sure, something like that.
Yep. Okay.
Do you still think they would go with Penn State?
So in this scenario, Penn State still goes to the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
They had a fluke win against Michigan. Michigan kills Ohio State. Ohio State kills Penn State.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're really drawing up some scenarios that are kind of hard to fathom, but it's possible.
Sure.
How do you get around that Penn State in a situation in which they had direct competition with those two teams, won their fair share in whatever fashion, and played a tougher schedule, and then won an additional game that meant the Big Ten championship. I just don't know how you get around it. I understand your reasoning. I understand the kind of conversations we could have, but I don't know how you get around the 12-1 Big Ten champion.
My thing is, I just feel like it's completely, like, at that point, it's just completely lucky that Penn State got in. They just got in because Minnesota and Purdue happened to be good this year. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you could say that about a lot of non-conference schedules, for example. You could say,
sure.
You could say, we could make all sorts of examples of teams that thought they scheduled difficult games, but they didn't turn out to be difficult games, or they scheduled Cincinnati 8 years ago and they actually turned out to be really good last year and they beat you to knock you out of the playoff, meaning Notre Dame. So I think the committee should be evaluating the teams and the schedules, not the intent of the schedule. That's all well and good, but it's just that's the way it is. Penn State ended up playing the two best teams in this scenario, the two best teams in the Western Division. Therefore, they played a decidedly more difficult schedule than either Michigan or Ohio State. That's how they're evaluating everybody across the country. And according to the committee, they don't compare teams in the same conference. They use the same criteria across the board and just basically say, we're selecting the 4 best teams.
Okay. But I also think part of the reason why in 2016 Penn State didn't get in was because Michigan beat them by so much. Because we saw in 2018 where Auburn almost made it above, it was the same scenario where Alabama was 11-1, but Auburn would have gone in if they beat Georgia, as opposed to Alabama, who ended up getting in because they
would have been the SEC champion.
Yes, but like in 2016, Penn State was the Big Ten champion, and they didn't get in.
Well, of course. So what was going against Penn State again was 2 losses, one of them egregious. Yeah, 42-10, I believe, was the final score at
49-10.
49-10. So they lost 49-10 at Michigan. They lost 2 games. Ohio State only lost 1 game. Ohio State went to Wisconsin, which was a top 10 team in the country, and beat them. They went to Oklahoma, which was a top 10 team in the nation, and that was a close loss. And you could say a fluke of a loss, but at least a close loss against Penn State. Had they lost to Penn State by 25 points, I think we would have had a completely different decision. But they lost 24-21 on a blocked kick with 4 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, but Penn State did also beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. And, they did win the game against Ohio State. I can't exactly remember how the Auburn thing went, but I feel like it was pretty similar. Obviously, they didn't lose 49-10 or anything, but they did still have the 2 losses, and they were on the brink of making it still regardless.
Well, they would have
similar situation. Yeah, they would have made it.
Yeah, they were number 2 or 3 in the country going into the SEC championship. Yeah.
But they also did have the 2 losses.
Yeah,
I don't know
Auburn
who their second.
They lost to Clemson.
Was it Clemson? Yeah, it was Clemson.
By 1 score, and they must have lost to. I'm guessing LSU would be my guess off the top of my head. They lost 2 close games, but they beat the number 1 team in the country twice in the span of 3 weeks.
Yeah, Georgia and Alabama. I do remember that. Okay. My other question to you was, so I ran across a video of yours where an Ohio State fan said something about moving the Ohio State-Michigan game off of the last week of the season because he didn't want to see them play twice in a row. So I was cringing watching that video too, but I was thinking, like, how could they possibly avoid a scenario of that happening. So I came up with like, I guess, my own idea of how they could, get rid of the divisions while still, having the Michigan Ohio State game still be just as meaningful as it would be on the last weekend of the season. I was thinking, like, why don't they do like, I guess each team gets their own like rivalry team that they can't play against in the Big Ten championship. So I guess Michigan's would be Ohio State's, and Wisconsin's would be Minnesota or something like that. Whoever they play on the last week of the season, that team they can't play in the like. You would have to be the best team in your particular 2-team pod system to make the Big Ten championship. So we wouldn't get like a rematch between Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. If that makes sense.
I understand this. So this is with USC and UCLA. We got 16 teams and we got 14 pods, and you have to win your pod to play, even if the 2 best teams in the conference are in the same pod.
I was just thinking making it like just a 2-team pod. Like every team just has the one team they play at the end of the season. So like Michigan State plays Penn State. Okay. So they wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept. I really don't have an issue with that on the surface.
My idea would be, the situation with the way we have it now is sometimes you can get it where not only is it not the top 2 teams, the top 2 best teams in the conference, it might even not be like the 4th best team in the conference in the Big Ten championship. I mean, last year, Wisconsin beat Iowa head to head, and they probably would have made it to the Big Ten championship if they didn't have to play both Penn State and Michigan from the other division. So like we ended up with a scenario where Iowa wasn't even one of the 5 best teams in the Big Ten, and they still got in. Debatable. So in my, yeah, but like they did get destroyed by Wisconsin, Purdue. But regardless,
they did, but they also beat Penn State.
That game was kind of fluky. Their QB got hurt, and they were up by like 17 when Sean Clifford got hurt. And then all of a sudden, Iowa started coming back.
Well, there's a little bit more to that. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, my scenario would never allow a situation like the worst team you could go up against is the 3rd best Big Ten team. So take last year, for example. It would have been Michigan and Michigan State in the Big Ten championship, as opposed to Michigan versus Iowa, because Michigan State was the 3rd best Big Ten team.
Michigan State was the 3rd best Big Ten team based on what criteria?
Well, they would have had it. It's basically you play your regular Big Ten schedule
because they couldn't play Ohio State again, even though Ohio State was better than Michigan.
Would have been, Okay. Which would have put,
So the conference standings would just be 1 through 16, and there would just be an understanding that the top 2 would make it unless they were in that pod.
In your particular, yeah.
I don't have a big issue with that. I can't really tear that to shreds. I don't have a huge issue with that.
I even did like a way you could schedule it. I had so basically each pod you play one team in each particular pod, and that like kind of rotates vice versa each year. But like the other team in your pod, say Michigan and Ohio State are in the same pod. They would play USC and UCLA. One team would play USC, the other would play UCLA, and then the next year it would flip. So every other year you'd play, every team.
Okay, so you've come up with a good remedy here. However, when we look at last year's situation, I do have an issue with Michigan and Michigan State would play in the Big Ten championship game. Okay, the only reason Ohio State's not there is because they're in this pod with Michigan. However, Ohio State had a better record than Michigan State, number 1, 8-1 to 7-2, and they completely blew them
I mean, yeah,
off the face of the earth. Game was
I
49 to nothing
understand.
at halftime. And then on top of that, Michigan State and Michigan, they also played during the regular season. So I don't know that
Yeah, but
Michigan State would really have earned that spot under those
my
circumstances.
thing is, I feel like if if you can't beat your biggest rival, why play in the game anyway? Now, you don't necessarily have to be the best. You don't have to beat your rival. If you have a better record, sure, you can, lose to Ohio State and make it if
Sure.
you're ended up being a better team that season. But I feel like if you're not better than your biggest rival anyway, why play the game? That I feel like that particular game has to be the most meaningful in that sense. Maybe that's unfair, but that's just how I look about it.
Well, in a sense, it is unfair, and it would have been unfair last year. But at the same time, the divisions aren't fair. So
Sure.
I think you've
I
come up
I
with a
mean,
nice remedy. I don't think it's foolproof, but it's a good remedy.
I feel like my system is much better than what we have. And I mean, I don't really want to see a situation where Michigan and Ohio State go into the last game of the season knowing that they're going to have to play each other the next week anyway. It kind of makes that last particular game, obviously, it's still huge because it's Michigan and Ohio State, but it does take a little bit of the
Yes.
impact away from that game.
It takes away. I think that the first time it would happen, I think there would be some kind of special quality to that. For one time, okay, they're playing in a Big Ten championship game, Ohio State and Michigan. I think that there would be some kind of quality that would be interesting to that, intriguing to see just this being much different. But if we're sitting here 10 years from now, and Ohio State and Michigan have played in 5 Big Ten championship games against each other a week after they played, then it will have taken away on a semi-consistent basis away from the regular season meeting, just like I believe it would have been fascinating had they played in the 06 national championship game for that one time as a rematch. But yeah, I think you've got a good remedy there. I just, again, when I look at that situation last year, that would be difficult for me to stomach. And that's not even as an Ohio State fan. That's just wanting to see the best teams play, and that being a bit of an issue there.
I mean, yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, it's not like Ohio State wouldn't get to be in the playoff because we have a 12-team playoff anyway. So,
Sure.
I mean, unfortunately, they would lose the opportunity to play for a Big Ten championship, but they would be able to get their revenge if they met Michigan in the playoff anyway. So, because if we come up with that situation, that means both teams are good enough to make the playoff anyway. So, is it really that big of a deal that Ohio State was clearly the second best team in the Big Ten, and they don't get an opportunity to play in the Big Ten? Instead, they get an opportunity to be in the playoff. Is it that big of a? Is it?
They're playing for a bye. Is what
Yeah.
they're playing for. They're playing for a bye, and in this case, if Michigan State loses the Big Ten championship game to Michigan, they may be knocking themselves out of the playoff. That's another thing that we need to start to consider, and hopefully this committee has a handle on when we get to this 12-team playoff, and that's there are going to be conference championship games in which the loser of the conference championship game could be knocking themselves out of the 12-team playoff.
Why is that such a bad, why is that such a bad thing?
It's a bad thing because had they not made the conference championship game, they would have made the playoff.
I'm trying to think of a scenario. So last year, you're saying if Michigan and Michigan State played and Michigan State lost, they would have knocked themselves out of
a 12-team playoff. So I looked at let's say 10 years. I looked at the last 10 years. I ran through the 12-team playoff through what happened the last 10 years. And you see all sorts of situations in which the conference the loser of a conference championship game would have knocked themselves out by playing that game, would have knocked themselves out of a playoff spot.
Oh, okay. To be honestly, I don't think a team that loses 56-7 deserves to be in the playoff anyway. Personally,
Absolutely.
I think it would have.
Yeah.
I think for Michigan State, if they would have gotten the opportunity to play in the Big Ten championship last year, I think it would have been an opportunity for them to earn their way in by proving we beat the top seed in the Big Ten twice. And to me, that would have, partially erased that horrendous performance against Ohio State. And I feel like if you're a borderline, top 12 team, is you should have to fight your way to make the playoff. Is that such a bad thing to say?
The point I'm making, I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're saying, but the point I'm making is that if you go through each season and apply this 12-team playoff, we see all sorts of teams that don't make conference championship games, that are 10-2, and they make the playoff. And then we see teams that were 10-2 lose the conference championship game because they're subjected to having to play one of the top 5 to 8 teams in the country. They lose the game and
they drop rankings. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And they drop the rankings. Exactly.
I feel like that's completely on the committee. They have to be able to decide, they have to know, oh, this team is better. But yeah, I don't know. I really like my plan because I don't, as much as I love the Michigan-Ohio State game, I look forward to it every year. I don't really want to see them play back-to-back weeks. I do think that takes a little bit of a punch away. So I
also don't like it for this reason, because there are going to be years, not just with this game, but with other games, where one team is going to be, let's say, undefeated. And even if they lose, they will be in the Big Ten championship game. There will be one of the two that will not need to win that game to make the Big Ten championship game. And the other team needs to win to make the Big Ten championship game. So it puts, it kind of compromises the outcome of the game, and then they got to turn around and play again.
You're saying the other reason why you don't like the back-to-back, them playing against each other, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that there are times in which one of the teams will have cemented their berth into the Big Ten championship game already, and they don't need to win that game, whereas the other team needs to win the game. So it kind of
are you talking about in my way of doing things?
No, I'm talking about just in general. If we had,
in general,
yes.
Okay, yeah. I guess that kind of goes into why my system would be, I guess, better. Because you would avoid, because if Ohio State or Michigan needed to win that last game, only one of them can get to the Big Ten championship, so they would both need to win that game at that point, right?
Yes, under your system.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Under my system. Mm-hmm. I feel like I was going to say one more thing, and then I'll leave. I feel like it would also make the final game against your biggest rival just that much more huge, because you have the power to basically take out your opponent by finishing ahead of them in the pod that you're in.
For sure. Well, thanks for the call.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Three-Star.
Yep.
All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And we had a number of people there that were wanting next caller. We've got no more callers, only one caller. And this is one of the issues. This is the only issue concerning not having the call-in system, where we always had a line of calls, as I think people lose track of the link that is posted. And then maybe a number of people don't want to call because they don't want to have their face on screen. But as you've seen many times, you don't need to use your camera. That is not necessary. but I have posted the link in the chat so you can join the show. All right, Falconer X is here all over the place, so we appreciate him. Let's recognize Falconer X. If I can find him. Falconer X. Big Ten guys love Big Ten teams as SEC guys love SEC teams. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I'll just let that sit there. And then we got Falconer X chiming in with Better Blue Eyes, Kirk Herbstreit, or Steve Dace. Maybe we should take a poll on that, Falconer X. I would have never put those two together, but hey, if my eyes are sometimes blue, they're sometimes hazel, and I obviously did not get elevated to this kind of eye status, having mesmerizing type eyes. So good one there, Falconer X, if anyone wants to chime in on that. Dace or Herbie, super sticker. Thank you so much for that. Turf talk, we can always do that as well. Let's talk turf. All right, next caller on the line. But before we hit that, Falconer X, my system is best completely turf-based. But you would only have to let us know, Falconer X, which turfs rank best. So I'm right there with you. Hunter's on the line. How you doing tonight, sir? Hello, Hunter. No, this is Porter. I'm sorry. Porter's on the line.
Yeah,
Porter.
Yeah, I looked away and I heard Hunter. I was like, okay, I guess I'm not the next call. So good evening, Mark. It's been a while.
I know, Porter. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, my dogs are 6-0, and kind of a roller coaster of a year, but things are good. Kind of a young team, but you were I hadn't listened in a while, not because my lack of interest. I love your show. But I start talking about the playoff, and it sounds like you're coming around to my way of thinking. I got to give you credit. You and I went.
What? What am I coming around to?
How important the playoff is, and how these conference championship games don't mean anything.
Well, wait a minute. Well, of course, the playoff's important. We've made it important. A playoff is important to any sport. It decides the champion. I just don't like it taking away from the rest of the sport because I'm immune to the playoff. For whatever reasons, I'm immune to the playoff in any way taking away from the bowl games for me. There have been times, I don't know what game was being played or 2 or 3 games being played early in the playoff day last year prior to Alabama, Cincinnati, but had those games gone longer and gone into overtime, I would have kept watching those over Alabama and Cincinnati. So the playoff doesn't in any way deteriorate my value placed in bowl games, but that's me, and I'm an aberration. I'm an aberration when it comes to almost all these topics. So yeah, the playoff is, of course, we need a playoff to determine the best team. Sure.
Well, I love the way we're headed. I don't like everything. I've talked about NIL, how much I hate it, how much I hate the transfer portal. But the one thing that I feel very, very positive about in the future of this sport is the playoff. I think I haven't really kept up with it as much as I was up until, I guess, Labor Day. And once Labor Day got here, my family's been so busy, I hadn't been able to call in and keep up with everything except for the Georgia games. But what is it still looking like the 12-team playoff is probably what we're going to go to? Is that what you're hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Seems almost a certainty. Yeah.
Well, I just, like I've always said, Mark, my team, we've been multiple years. It's a wonderful thing. Once you go for the first time, like we did in 2017 and then last year, it's just, you get spoiled to where that's all you care about is the playoff. So, if my team went 10-1 every year and we somehow got in the playoff, or I'm sorry, 11-1 or 10-2 or whatever, once the 12
Yeah.
playoff gets here, I'm fine with that. Just get me in. That's all I care about. I don't really, we've won more SEC championships than everybody but Alabama.
What? Whoa. Really? Do I need to verify that? Has Georgia won more SEC championships than Tennessee?
We're tied 13.
Okay. All right. Those two were tied
We're
with
in
13. Okay. All right.
So what do we have to really prove? I mean, if we win another SEC championship, what do we really care? I mean,
You've won a national championship. What do you have to prove? Why do you have to win another one of those?
Well, I mean, I think we're stuck. We're stuck in that tier of teams like Florida and Clemson and FSU that are stuck on 3 national championships, and it would be nice to break through and be in that tier with the Oklahomas and the Texases of the world in terms of the number of of national championships. So, love for by the time I go to the big Sanford Stadium in the sky, it'd be nice to be in that tier of. I mean, we're never going to catch Alabama. I mean, nobody is, but it would be nice to break away from other regional powers like Florida and FSU and Clemson that are stuck on 3 national championships. So, but I mean, I don't know. Like I said, once you get a taste of this playoff, I mean, it just, it's all you want, really. And so I'm happy for it. I don't like to treat it like an exclusive club either. I'm excited about what it's going to do by bringing in, other teams, non-Power 5 teams that are going to have a shot to get in the playoff. I think what happened with Cincinnati last year was great for our sport. It's going to be wonderful to see other non-Power 5 teams get in there. I don't know. I just feel really good about the future of our sport as it pertains to that. Now, what it does to the Music City Bowl or the Outback Bowl or whatever, I mean, I see those things going away. I still hope we incorporate the bowls because the bowls are part of our tradition. But the major bowls, I hope, stay.
Are they really bowl games anymore?
What's that?
Who cares what they're called? They're playoff games. Like I might be completely off the rails and the only person that has this opinion. But to me, when the Rose Bowl's in the college football playoff, when it's one of the semifinal games, to me, it's not the Rose Bowl. Who cares? It's not the Rose Bowl. It's a playoff game.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, when Auburn played Florida State that year, I mean, I'm sure you didn't think of it as a Rose Bowl, right?
Well, at that point, it was not the Rose Bowl.
Oh, did they? I'm trying to remember in 13. So they had the Rose Bowl.
That was the BCS championship game.
Who played in that Rose Bowl? I'm trying to remember.
Michigan State and Stanford.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was thinking for some reason. Oh, I know. When Texas and Southern Cal played, that was the only Rose Bowl, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Right. That drove me up the wall. I hated that. As soon as the BCS started to mess around with the Rose Bowl, it just pissed me off.
Well, Mark,
to death.
You're a historian of the game like I am. We love the game.
Yeah.
So when all these teams that used to play in the Rose Bowl back in the 20s and 30s, I mean that's part of the tradition of the Rose Bowl, right? I mean, it did become a big.
It is part of the tradition of the Rose Bowl, but that's not my tradition of the Rose Bowl. That's not what I grew up with. That's not what I embraced. Was Duke or Army playing in the Rose Bowl?
Well, back in the 30s, back in the 40s.
Yeah, I wasn't around then, so I don't care what they were doing.
I wasn't either, but I mean, every team that has great tradition can go back during that time and talk about the year their team went to the Rose Bowl back in the 40s. I mean, it's just part of our sport. So
yeah, I respect that, but I don't care about it. I can respect somebody's opinion and not agree with it. I can respect that as being part of the sport's history, but I don't care about it. What I care about is I grew up in the Midwest as a follower of college football and a fanatic of college football and wanting Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship and go to the Rose Bowl and play the winner of the Pac-10. And that was the Rose Bowl to me.
Yeah, I understand. Believe me, I understand. As a Southern guy, I feel the same way about the Sugar Bowl. I mean, I don't.
And exactly, and to a lesser degree, I feel that way and did feel that way. Let's say in the 1980s, not just watching the Rose Bowl, but understanding that the SEC champion went to the Sugar Bowl and the Southwest Conference champion went to the Cotton Bowl, and the Orange Bowl was the Big 8 champion, the Big 12 champion, all that, and I like that. But it doesn't matter now. It's all blown to bits. It just doesn't matter.
I guess I don't understand from your standpoint, Mark, is you're a, I know you don't like to say it a lot, but you're a fan of Ohio State, and I know you try to be neutral, but you're a fan of a team that's going to make the playoff just about every year. So what exactly are you? What is your heartache with this? Heartburn with this stuff? I don't understand. If you like a team that has an even better possibility of making the playoff, why do you feel why are you so negative about it?
I'm negative about the playoff taking away from the rest of college football. I don't like the process of sitting here all year and everybody calling about 5 or 6 teams and not wanting to talk about anybody else unless it's their team. And that's all we talk about. And especially since this college football playoff selection committee has this magical formula, but it's not been revealed to anybody, but it's in their heads as to them selecting. And if I hear another person who basically says, well, they're the 4 best teams because they got selected, it's about the most ridiculous argument to be made. I don't like the system. It doesn't make any sense. It's idiotic. We've got 5 conferences. So the very first day this was announced, it only took my brain about 3/100ths of a second to process. This is a stupid system. We've got 5 conferences. We got 4 playoff spots. How is that going to work? And it hasn't worked. It's a stupid system.
Yeah, but I mean,
we put a committee in charge of selecting these teams. What do they know that the rest of us don't know? Actually, many of them know less.
But Mark, what do you? Well, think about it. If we're currently in the 12-team playoff right now, yes, what are the guys in Austin thinking right now? They think they have a shot to get in the playoff, right?
Absolutely.
And they're going to bust their, to try to get in the playoff. I don't think they have a good shot to get in the playoff now. Now, if it was a 12-team one,
yeah.
So my point is, it's going to bring so many more teams. It's going to give so many more teams hope.
I'm for playoff expansion. You're getting me wrong. I don't like what it's doing to the rest of the game, but I'm for playoff. I've been for playoff expansion the entire time. Ever since the 4-team was announced, and I said, well, that's moronic. What idiot came up with a 4-team playoff? That doesn't make any sense. I thought this was going to be a playoff, not just a championship game. When you say playoff, that to me means that you have a system that determines what teams make it. And especially if you win a conference, you should be advancing into a playoff. So I'm all for the expanded playoff. I know I'm on record for thousands of hours touting the expanded playoff, but I don't like what it's doing to the rest of college football.
So you don't think, let's just say Arizona State are playing and they're both 6-5.
Yep.
And they're going, you're telling me because of the expansion of the playoff, those guys aren't going to lay it on the line at that game at the end of the year?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that nobody cares. You just stated that all the Music City Bowl and all these other bowl games.
But I mean, those guys care. I mean, they want to win their in-state. I guess I'm trying to figure out what part of the game you're saying is going to be devalued. I don't really.
The part that has already been devalued, it's just going to be devalued more. It's like Nick Saban. He brings it up all the time. He points it out. Everybody's just hyper-focused on the playoff. Nobody cares about anything else, and it's not good for the sport.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. Well, anyway, this is something we can talk about in the offseason. Okay, who do you have? Tennessee, Bama.
My picks are on Patreon. I don't know. I haven't decided. I know that I seem to be in the minority of people who think that even if Bryce Young doesn't play, which I fully expect him to play, that if he doesn't play, that I still think Alabama's a better football team.
I think Tennessee's going to beat them. I really do.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. Well, let me put it this way. In a sense, I have picked Tennessee before the season started because I picked Alabama to go 11-1, and I gave Tennessee the highest percentage chance of beating them. So they kind of were my pick to beat Alabama.
I thought you said Arkansas had the best shot of beating Alabama.
It was either Tennessee or Arkansas. They were 1-2, 2-1, whatever it was. I don't know. I'd have to go back. Everything I say is documented, so it's right there. I put a graphic up with whatever it was, whatever the list of teams. I know it was Arkansas, Tennessee, or Tennessee, Arkansas, and they were almost neck and neck. I put a percentage on it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, I wanted to call in, say hello. Have a good football Saturday.
Thanks, Porter.
Ornery, but that's okay.
Me? Was I ornery?
I'm just messing with you. All right, man.
No, I think you're right.
All
Porter, enjoy the game. Let's see. Georgia's got who? Oh, Vandy. You got a week off. So
yeah, it's gonna be a nice 2 weeks. We got an off week after Vandy and make plans for the trip to Jacksonville.
Good stuff. Thanks, Porter.
All right. See you, my friend. Bye.
Good to hear from Porter. Porter makes a whole lot of sense. I don't disagree with him. I just think it's just a different perspective. Like there's nothing he says that's wrong. Some people get on here and they spew out like illogical perspective and non-facts, non-truth, and so forth. But Porter makes a whole lot of sense. He only cares about that playoff. He no longer cares about SEC championships. See, that hurts me. That hurts me. That just, yeah. Absolutely. All right. Look at this. Yeah. David Knight's on the line. How about that?
Absolutely. All right.
David, please put me down in the background so we can hear the conversation.
All right.
Hello, David.
How are you there? Hey, yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, can you do something about the audio in the back? We got a crazy reverb.
That fix it?
I hope so. How you doing?
I'm good. Yourself?
I am doing just fine. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. And yourself? Hey, just wanted to ask you, what do you this is going back a little bit ways, but at some point in time, coaches, when they took over new programs, they were giving like that 4-year increment where they had the ability to recruit 4 years,
Yes.
of their own guys, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So now when coaches take over new programs, it seems like if there's not instant success that they're, ready to be beheaded.
So who are your examples of not lasting 4 years?
I don't have the
I'm not saying you're
I'm
wrong.
No, I'm talking like
you.
I exchanged messages with Shuley Sooner. I don't know why Oklahoma's ended up with the record they have. He was telling me that they, didn't have a lot of roster left when Brett Venables took over. So things are not maybe going that well. And then on the other hand, if you talk with Tim Prangley, Lincoln Riley has done very well in the jury's still out, I believe, but they've done very well. They've acquitted themselves. And,
Yes.
Me being a Notre Dame fan, Marcus Freeman stumbled a little bit out the block, but, slowly getting better. I guess my question is when you have an entirely new coaching staff or largely a new coaching staff, and you have the players that were left from another coach, they have to have this mesh, right? to see, because you're trying to establish a new culture and a winning culture. And even Mario Cristobal, right? They're not playing so great, but he inherited a team from another coach. So with all that said, how difficult is it to bring yourself as a head coach and a largely new coaching staff that was there before? They're all replaced, and you have to earn players' trust, and you have to evaluate players. And like also Tim was saying that Lincoln Riley just got rid of a lot of guys maybe that had marginal attitudes. What do you think about that?
All right, so you bring up a great discussion here, and I would challenge anyone to leave in the chat what coaches were fired the quickest, not because there was any kind of scandal, but just based on losing. The first name that comes to mind to back up your point would be Willie Taggart, Florida State. He was only in his second season.
Absolutely.
He did not get to complete his second season, and he was fired. Other than him, I'm trying to come up with who else. But anyway, well, we're in a society of instant gratification. Fast food, fast everything. Yes. I watched a video the other day where a guy was going through album reviews, and he was talking about, back being kids and going down to the record store and buying an album, and you had to wait at least, a half hour, an hour until you could put the thing on the turnstile so you could listen to it. But now you download a tune and you listen to it immediately. So we expect these guys to be, we know that they're making a lot of money. Number one, they're making a lot of money to come through. Number two, they are, we're generally judging programs that we believe should be winning. And so, yeah, Brent Venables, it doesn't look good what's going on there. I tend to just, I think that ultimately he needs to be given the time to show whether he's the right guy for the job. So I'm somewhat concerned. I don't totally get why things are as bad as they are, especially him having the reputation as the best defensive coach in the country, why he can't fix some things. Now, we had a Parker Thune from 247 Sports on this week who said basically, and he made a great point. He said, Brent Venables worked for Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney has raised the Clemson program to a point where he can now be a CEO. And maybe Brent Venables is using that model too quickly at Oklahoma, where he has to be a coach. He's got to fix the defense. He's got to be calling the defensive plays and using his expertise at the ground level, at the grassroots level. But he's trying to be a CEO, and he needs to get to that point maybe 5 years down the line. I don't know if that's answering your question. What in terms of why these guys are struggling? Well, somebody's got to struggle because somebody's got to lose the games. Not everybody can win.
Yeah, in order for somebody to win, somebody's got to lose.
Yeah. See, that's another thing that I think David gets lost by a lot of people is that I'm sure you have experienced that you can generally go on your job and just get the job done, be excellent at your work, and nobody's really preventing you from being excellent at your work. I've been at a number of jobs throughout my career, and I was pretty much evaluated, I think, most of the time correctly, and I could succeed at my job, and it was up to me. I didn't have anybody preventing me from being good at my job. These guys have somebody else on the other sideline that's preventing them from being good at their job. You could have the two best head coaches in the world on the same football field with the two best coaching staffs, and you know what? At the end of 3 hours, somebody's a failure. So not everybody can be good at their job. Only roughly half or a third or whatever your criteria can be good at their job. So I say this all the time when I rank these coaches, when I go through each conference and I rank the coaches, I'll sometimes say, all these coaches are capable. I think they're all really good, but somebody's got to be ranked last. And I may even think that he's a decent coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean he can't do the job. It just means that somebody's better.
And the other thing, Mark, I think like coaches should be and like an orchestrator of all the individual coaches, because you have an offensive coordinator, you have a defensive coordinator, and then it's like a tree that matriculates downward where you have a defensive line coach, you have a linebacker coach, you have a corners coach, you have a safeties coach, and you have all these varied coaches. And I think that, like for a head coach who ultimately will take the blame for anything because he's in charge, but it really, I guess like sometimes I feel like it's unfair, like when somebody starts out in a new program. I'm not talking about Notre Dame. I'm not dwelling on that. But what I'm saying is for any college football program, for a guy to come in and flip the switch, and, it's not always plug and play. It takes some time.
Oh, absolutely. The thing, though, David, that's alarming about the Brent Venables situation is we're not talking about Josh Heupel taking over a 3-win Tennessee team. We're not talking about Sam Pittman taking over an Arkansas program that hadn't won a game in the SEC for 2 consecutive years. We're talking about Brent Venables, who took over one of the top 10 teams in the nation. Now, to your point, there was a lot of attrition off of that team. However, still, they did bring in some decent transfer portal players themselves. And I think most people would rate this as a top 15 to 20 roster in the country. And the last 2 weeks, they've looked like the worst team in the world.
Sure. And I got that. And like when you brought up an interesting point, Mark, on transfer portals. I always felt like people that enter the transfer portal are either disgruntled with the situation that are on their team, or they're just like way behind because maybe the actual position that they play is stacked, right? It's stacked with really good players. So in their minds, maybe they're thinking, man, the chances for me to get to play is minimal. And who's to say other good players don't come in behind me and lap me as well? So then, they transfer, but in a lot of instances, it doesn't pan out well for them. Some it does. Like the USC wide receiver, Jordan, what's his last name?
Addison.
That guy's going to be good no matter where he goes, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, okay, this guy's the one of the exceptions to the rule, but I don't know. I think sometimes fan bases get really alarmed for no good reason. It sucks losing to Marshall. And Marshall's lost to everybody that's no good, but it happens. And I think Ohio State beat Notre Dame twice. And what can you say and what can you do?
Yeah. All good points, sir.
So if you got another caller, let them jump in. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, thank you, David. But if you've got anything else, go right ahead, because I don't have another caller.
If I had one thing to say, like, in the chat, there was some debate about the playoff system. If you look at the NCAA basketball tournament, at one point in time, it was like 40 teams, then it grew to 60. And then if you look at the college football playoff system, where it's 4 teams that could expand to 6, could expand to 8, could expand to 10, could expand to 12. There's always going to be somebody that's got an argument with that. And I just feel like at some point in time, they just need to say, hey, this is how it's going to be. And if you don't make it, you don't make it. Sorry. Because you can't accommodate everybody all the time.
But I understand what you're saying, David, and that's an often used argument. However, this is my pushback on that argument. There are 5 major conferences. There are 4 spots. Okay? So there is nothing. I always love to ask the chat this question. What is the one thing that you can do to guarantee that you will make the college football playoff? What is the one thing you can do? Let's see if anybody answers this question. What is the one thing you can do to guarantee? What can a team do to guarantee that they will make the college football playoff? Does anybody have the answer? Be ranked number 1. Well, they don't have control over that. What is the thing? Win your conference. No, that's. Thank you, Roger Dodger. Nothing. The Daniel Henry. Nothing. Actually, John, you might be right with win the SEC, but so the point is that it's the only sport known to man where we cannot tell a team, this is what you need to do to make the playoffs. That doesn't exist. There's nothing you can tell a team. And it's not
objective, it's subjective.
Yes. If every team that wins a conference championship goes undefeated, one of them is going to get left out.
You know, I've posed that question, in the year Pac-12 after dark hours, and I think I posted yesterday, because I'm interested in people's takes that, hey, there are some legitimate teams. How would you decide that, say, I'm just throwing a for instance, if TCU went undefeated and USC went undefeated, Ohio State goes undefeated, Clemson goes undefeated. Let's say, like in a crazy scenario, Tennessee went undefeated. How do you say, hey, sorry, pal, you're not getting in?
Yes, exactly. So anyway, there is nothing that you can do to guarantee a playoff spot. That's insane. That there is a system built in which you can't even tell a team what they need to do to make the playoffs. And my other pushback on what you said about that, if we just keep expanding, then if we expand to 8, then number 9 can complain. And if we expand to 12, number 13 complains, etc. I get that. But the difference is between going from 4 to whatever is that you now guarantee that every conference is represented. And the argument to anyone who complains about that is you had the opportunity to win your conference and guarantee a playoff spot. That's what will be better about an 18 playoff or a 12-team playoff or a 16-team playoff. That doesn't currently exist.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't like it at 4. I do not. I'm just saying that as you expand the numbers, it's kind of one of those things that as you move forward, I feel like, even there's always going to be somebody that says, hey, this is not fair. I deserve to be in here. But at the end of the day, you have to snip the line somewhere.
Well, you have to snip the line, but it would be good to snip the line in a structured system, not with a bunch of people in a room that decide who make the playoff.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, so I didn't want you to take what I said in the wrong manner, because I think you mentioned 12 teams before. I think 12 teams is a good scenario, and I don't like teams having to bye. I think if someone has to play, someone has to play. No matter how you slice it, even if it's, say, like a number 1 Ohio State team playing a number 12 Oklahoma State team.
Well,
I'm just
one would not be playing 12.
be 6.
You would need buys. That's not a number in which you cannot have buys. So 5 is playing 12, and the top 4 get buys.
Okay. Well, however you slice it, I think that 12 teams might, I'm saying might, underline, be more representative of a fair gathering of teams that, had worked hard and earned the right to be there. Even the Big 12, when we look at them, they've always been high-powered offenses, with the exception of a few teams. But like when you look at Oklahoma State, Texas Christian, Texas, man, now throw in Kansas. Kansas came out of nowhere, and Oklahoma dropped out. But there's always been this mix of teams. Like they have high-powered offenses, but they don't have very good defense, and I don't know why that is, but it just,
Well,
hey,
I think I think we're past that point with the Big 12. I think that was a 2005 or 6 to maybe 3 or 4 years ago narrative. Right now, we've got 2 of the top 5 offenses in the country are in the SEC. We only have 1 out of the top, in terms of yards per game, only 1 of the top 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6, 18 offenses in the country are in the Big 12.
That could be. I just, I look at the scores, and I'm like you, man. I can't watch all the games at one time, because if you try to watch too many games at one time, you'll end up not watching any games at one time.
True.
But I will say this one thing, and I'm going to let you go. I think I've run out of information, but
we got some calls lined up. So
yeah, the parity in college football this year is incredible. I love it. It's good. It's good.
Okay, David. Well, I appreciate you calling.
Have a good one, bro.
You too. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Always good to hear from Notre Dame fan David Knight. Let's take our last 2 calls here at the Voice of College Football. I don't know that the parity's any different this year than any other year. I don't see any difference. Maybe I'm missing something. What am I missing here? I think every year we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. And then when we go to the next tier, we've got like a 5 to 15 tier, something in that range. And then it goes off the cliff after that. After about 15, 16 in that range, and I'm not talking about the stupid AP rankings. I'm talking about actual on the field. So 15, 16 to 40, they're the same team. They're almost the same team. And I think that's pretty much where we've lived here for 10 years. All right, J-Dub's on the line. J-Dub, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, how we doing?
I am doing just fine.
I'm the old fuddy-duddy, of course. I like the 4. I don't want to change from the 4.
Yep.
And then if we do change from the 4, I want the situation. My solution is the one that nobody else in the world wants, and that's the 6+1. Play the 6 New Year's bowl games.
And
play the 1. The main thing that I don't want is I don't want to water down the broth. I don't care who that offends. I don't want to water down the broth, and I'm not interested in a bye. I think that's a horrible horrible idea for college to give a team a bye. That's
agreed.
There's just no way you can describe how much of an advantage that is. You say, well, the other team will get to play a home game. You ask Nick Saban, I'll give you a home game or I'll give you a bye. There's no discussion there.
Yeah. Yes, we're on the same page there, J-Dub. I don't think a number of people understand that. Okay, I'll lay this out once again, and you can chime in with anything you got for me on this one. And this is how I explain it. Let's say we're sitting here on conference championship weekend. We play all our conference championship games. Okay, the selection committee comes out and they say, there's our 12 teams. Okay, those 4 get byes. And let's say number 4 is Oklahoma State, and number 5 is Oregon. And there's no way to really determine any difference between the two. They both lost one game. They both won their conference championship. It's just some kind of arbitrary selection by the committee. They had to choose a 4 and had to choose a 5. Well, your number 5 team's Oregon. They got to play the 12th best team in the country. They got to play Ole Miss. And of course, your 4 seed, Oklahoma State, gets a layup. They don't get anything. So number 1, the most obvious advantage is you win. You can't lose versus you got a 50% chance of losing. And then number 2, you can't look past anyone. It's not like Oregon can look past Ole Miss and say, you know what, we're going to really not prepare for them because we got to prepare for this Oklahoma State team. No, they're the 12th best team in the country, and they might be better than that. So we better prepare. So you got to pour all your resources, all your film study, everything into Ole Miss and focus on them, while Oklahoma State can sit back, stay healthy, and watch the Oregon Ole Miss game and have the best scouting tape ever created, because they get to watch the 2 teams that the winner of the game is going to play them. They get to actually watch them, play them before they have to line up on the field against them. Plus the whole injury factor. And even if players don't get knocked out, just getting beat up. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the one other thing I'll throw in before J-Dub, I'll let you take it from here, is the difference between this bye system and a NFL bye system is that those byes were determined by actual on-field results. The on-the-field results determined the byes, and those teams actually earned it. It wasn't 13 people in a room saying, oh, you 4 get the byes and you don't get the byes.
Right. Yep. I have watched this is the 32nd year now. I have watched 19, 20, 21-year-old kids walk off of Big 8, Big 12, and Big 10 fields at the end of November like cripples because they're so beat up. Even the best players, the stars, the physical toll that it takes on them just to play a regular season. Now we're going to ask these kids to play potentially 15, 16 games. You get 12 games into a season, and it's not like you gave somebody a bye week September 10th. You're giving them a bye week in the second week of December or somewhere around there. And you're saying, here, you take this game off while your opponent plays again for maybe the 7th or 8th week in a row. And you just sit back and relax and sit in a hot tub and get that great game film like you were talking about. I mean, you just can't do it. And you certainly can't do it arbitrarily because Condoleezza Rice and 12 other people sat in a room and went, well, this is a good idea for this team to have it over this team, as opposed to, well, you know what? They went out and they won week 16 and we had to have them do that, and they won it, so they earned the bye. Because then now you're talking about, now we're going to go up to 16. No, come on. I mean, well, they won their conference. I don't care if you won your conference. That doesn't mean you get just because you won your conference. Well, when does I won my conference means you deserve a shot at the national championship? Okay, Cincinnati. Oh, look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati had no chance in hell of beating Alabama. Alabama toyed with them. They went out and they played they ran their third string offensive set of plays against them, and just tried to get off the field without getting anybody hurt. I mean, there's just too much of a talent gap there. I mean, and they're saying, well, here's the arrogant Alabama fan, from on high, like pointing at the peasants. Yes, I am. Some of you just don't deserve it. I'm sorry. There's a certain level. Do you really want to see? Do you want to see some of the slaughters we're going to see? Look at even with the four. Go back to 2014. How many close games have we had? Even with the four, most of these games are blowouts.
Yep, they are.
If it's not your team that's the top, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, change their names. Call them Team A, Team B, Team Smith, and Team Jones. Whatever. The Smith and the Jones are usually getting drilled every year in the semifinals. It's unusual that we get 3 good games out of the playoff system. Usually, at least 1 or 2 of them are stinkers. Unusual that Bama and Georgia gave us a great title game in 17 and a great title game in 21, because 18, 19, and 20 were not great title games. 15 and 16 were close. The Bama-Clemson games were close, but the semifinals were blowouts. I mean, Alabama destroyed Michigan State 38-0, and Michigan State was the Big Ten champion. I mean, so it comes down to, do they deserve a shot? Yeah, but everybody wants to talk about Appalachian State going to Michigan. They want to talk about Boise State beating Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Those games are remembered because they happen once every 20 years. That's why they're remembered.
Yep. All right, J-Dub.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to talk chalk, and I understand how this has got a sound coming from a Bama fan. I understand that. I'm just saying, I've said it before, Mark. You have your recipe for chili, and if you keep adding water to it, before long you don't have chili anymore, you got some kind of watered down soup. I don't know what the solution is. I got a feeling the money's going to talk, and they're just going to keep adding to it. But I wish you would, for the fans who have not heard you say it before, because you and I are on the same book, as you said. I'll get out of the way here and let everybody know what the 6+1 plan is, because I really do think that's the way to go. I think that salvages the interest of the conference championship winner crowd, and it salvages the interest of the capital T traditionalist bowl game crowd, both at the same time, in my opinion. And thanks, Mark. And hey, folks, the Amazon link, the thumbs up, the routine. Help the man out.
Thanks, J-Dub. I appreciate it. It's our guy, J-Dub. He's touting the 6 major bowl games and then the +1, which would be, and we had a conversation with our guy, Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire, about this. So the big plus here, in addition to the 1 game, but the big benefit is that this would preserve the importance of the major bowl games. So we are going to get to a point where, when the Rose Bowl is not part of the playoff, and it's always going to be, so that's a bad example. But anyway, the bowl games are being compromised. And right now, obviously, there's a rotation in which the Rose Bowl, for example, is not always part of the playoff, and it's compromised. Last year, it was not part of the playoff, still garnered a huge audience on TV, but It's almost an exhibition game of sorts. Okay, if we go back to pick your year of yesteryear and we play all the major bowl games as is designated by the conference affiliation. The SEC champion goes to the Sugar Bowl. The Big Ten champion goes to the Rose Bowl to take on the Pac-12 champion, etc. Then you've got the 6 major bowl games, of which you have 5 conference champions playing in those 6 spots. Maybe you've got the best of the group of 5. I don't know. I'll leave that up to somebody else. I've got my various opinions on that. And then you fill in the other spots based on the rankings, and you've got 6 major bowl games. If that's what we want to do, 6, it could be 5, it could be 4. But the point is that you've got to win your conference to secure a major bowl spot. You could still make one based on your wins and your ranking. And then after the bowl games are completed, because there's going to be an importance on the bowl games, on the major bowl games played on New Year's Day, because you have to get to one of those and you have to win to have a chance to be selected for the national championship game as a +1 game, 1 versus 2. All right. And it's an interesting concept because it still incorporates a playoff type system, but it also reinvigorates and reemphasizes the importance of the bowls. And we're not going to have an Ole Miss Baylor Sugar Bowl like we did last year with a compromised TV rating because everybody's like, we're playing the playoff, so who cares? Suddenly, the Sugar Bowl. It's the Sugar Bowl. It's the SEC champion. They're playing whomever, and you got to win that game to have a chance to be selected to the +1 national championship game. The only issue I have with that is that +1 selection could be a tricky one many years. All right, 2 more calls. We got Holden on the line. Holden,
Mark,
how are you?
can you hear me, Mark?
I can. What's going on tonight?
Well, it's actually a pretty relaxing day for me tomorrow. My Demon Deacons on a bye week. So,
Yeah.
kind of not
Good
to
stuff.
disrespect Boston College, but if we play like we do, it'll, in a way, be 2 bye weeks. Obviously, we could still lose that game, but if we play like we should, I think it will, in a way, feel like 2 weeks without stressful games. Really 3. The Army game last week went very well.
Not to cut you off, I'll let you go here in just a second. I just want to make mention that we're not going to do like we did last night and many other nights where I say 2 more calls and we take like 8 calls. So 2 more calls and Holden is number 1. So there we are. You can call me tomorrow night after the primetime game. So we'll be here at 11:30 Eastern time to take everybody's calls on Saturday night. All right, go to it, Holden.
All right. Maybe talk about Wake a little bit, and then obviously there's I think probably a lot of people would say the most hyped up, what we think will be the best weekend of college football so far, the biggest games probably.
Yeah.
I want to talk about specifically probably some of those ACC games and just the ACC in general. First with Wake, the Army. I didn't get a chance to talk to you since the Army game last week. That game went really well. Last year we gave over 400 rushing yards. And this year it was under 200 or 250. I think it was maybe 220 or so, I think, if I remember correctly. I can't say I'm positive on that, but it was something around there. So much improved game, not a shootout against a triple option team.
Okay, very nice.
I would say this Wake team, they have maybe 2 weaknesses in my mind that are pretty major weaknesses. It's our pass defense, at least right now, down our top cornerback, and our kickoff coverage. If we don't get the ball in the back of the end zone, it's pretty dangerous for us, and that's been a recurring problem for years. Now, I don't know if you know this, Mark, but the highest graded defensive player I don't know what you think of PFF grades.
I don't have a strong opinion about them because I haven't looked at them enough to be critical, but I know a lot of people are critical.
Well, I for what it's worth, the highest graded defender in the country actually right now plays for Wake Forest. It's defensive tackle Kobe Turner. He's a Richmond transfer. He's an absolute beast on the interior of the line. He is just kind of a power D tackle, just running through guys and disrupting the backfield. And I think he's been a pretty big part of, just somewhat, a good part of that improvement in the rushing defense from the disaster that it was last year.
That's what we need to do. You just gave me a great idea. I need to get somebody on here from Pro Football Focus. We need to grill them on their secret sauce and how they put all that together and challenge them a bit.
My understanding is that it's based on like they have actual scouts who watch the plays and go through and grade players by game. And they grade like the different elements of what they do. So just looking at the rest of the Wake schedule, I thought maybe this would be the easier part of the schedule. But all of a sudden you have Syracuse. Who knows what that's going to look like? UNC, even though I think we'll score 70 on them, they might score 70 on us. And obviously NC State's still there. Devin Leary seems questionable for that game at this point. So it's I think if Wake wins out, it's Orange Bowl. And if not, then I think it could be UNC or NC State who makes it there, or even, I guess, maybe even Duke at this point.
Duke in the Orange Bowl. Wow.
I mean, if they finish second in the ACC, I guess they could get denied a bid, but I think UNC is probably one of their hardest games left. So if they beat them this weekend and they beat Wake in their last game, I would think they would probably finish 10-2 or 11-1.
Yeah, from what I've seen thus far, I'm certainly going to be watching NC State and Wake to see who I think is the second best team in the ACC, because at this point, based on what I've seen, I do think that those are the 2 and 3 seeds in the ACC. It may not turn out that way, but based on the football I've seen, I think they are the second and third best teams.
I know this is relatively meaningless, and obviously I have bias as a Wake fan, but if you look at the performances, both teams have played the same 2 opponents in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Both played Clemson and NC State. Obviously, State played in Death Valley. But I would say that game was not necessarily ever. I think by the end of the third quarter, it was not necessarily. NC State could still win, but I think it felt like Clemson was the better team in that game.
Yeah.
Again, and then Wake obviously took them to double overtime, and the guy the player for Clemson who got 6 pass interferences knocks down the ball to win the game. So obviously that game was, I would say Wake obviously played a better game against Clemson than State did. And then Wake beats FSU at Florida State, and NC State struggles at home. And what I found odd was that their offensive production hardly changed when Devin Leary went out. They scored at basically the exact same rate. I didn't get to watch all the game, but just, looking at like the time he went out, I think they scored 10 or 12 points or something like that before he went out, and then they scored 9 after, and he went out about halfway through the game. So my question is just like, yeah, he was obviously preseason, but so not meaningful really at all, but he was considered the best player in the ACC going into the season. He was the ACC preseason player of the year.
Yeah, which means you are most likely a quarterback, or you are a skill position player. It doesn't mean you're the best player.
He was the best. He was considered the best quarterback in the ACC going into the year.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think if you look at like PFF, not to say it again, but PFF grades, I believe not PFF, sorry, QBR, I believe he grades out like 7th in the ACC this year.
Yeah, it's not been a great year for Devin Leary.
Yeah, so that's my thing. It's just like their offense, even with him, are they that much better against Wake? Like, is that really a huge determining factor in how that game goes? Him being there or not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's the starting quarterback, and he threw 35 TDs and 5 picks last year. So, all right, man. Anything else?
Just to talk about the ACC a little bit. If I had to ask you in 23 games, what do you think? 23 games against teams not in the ACC Atlantic. What do you think the record of ACC Atlantic teams are in those games?
Okay. So
in
that's
23
against,
games.
yes, that's against the Coastal and against non-conference play.
Yes.
Well, let's see. Clemson, Florida State, NC State, Louisville. Then we've got BC. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Virginia Tech. We've got Syracuse. We've got who am I missing? We got Wake. I'm going to say off the top of my head, 21-2.
Yep, just Boston College. Both losses
Okay.
to anyone out of the division. I
Okay.
understand that not all of them played great teams. They probably had a weaker, strength of schedule in terms of that than say the SEC West has so far,
Yes.
or maybe the Big Ten East.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's got to be one of, if not, obviously there's only 6 divisions now, but it's got to be one of, if not the best, and most certainly to me the deepest division in college football.
Yeah, I think you make great points. I don't agree with you, but I think it's a good argument. I'd say the SEC West is a deeper division. There is not a Boston College in the SEC West. There's not a Louisville in the SEC West.
I mean, LSU early in the season looked like, I don't know. I guess we'll see how they end up.
You really think LSU would not be a force in the ACC Atlantic Division?
I maybe this is crazy. I don't think anyone outside of Alabama, Ole Miss, and maybe Texas A&M would finish in the top 3 in the ACC Atlantic.
I don't know about that. So I'm trying to think who the ACC Atlantic has beaten. There's a win against Texas Tech. There's a win against LSU by a blocked PAT at the gun. There's, what else do we have? We've got a very questionable win against Purdue that the officials should not have gotten involved in. Where are the other wins? Those are like the 3 best teams that this division's beaten. So it's a very impressive 21-2 record. But yeah, it's LSU, Texas Tech, and who else did I say? 3 decent wins.
Well, where would you put LSU in the SEC West? 5th?
I would rank the SEC West right now. I'd rank it something like Alabama 1, Ole Miss 2, Mississippi State 3, probably Texas A&M 4, probably I'd go Arkansas 5, LSU 6, Auburn 7, something like that. I think 4 through 6 are close, really close.
So obviously it's just one game, but I'd say you put Florida State somewhere in that 4th or 5th spot, and they
Why?
beat
Just
LSU.
because they beat LSU in one game by 1 point?
Well, yeah, I'm saying it's just one game, but they looked like comparable teams when they played. Neither of them looked better.
Sure. Oh, I think they are comparable teams. Yeah.
So, and obviously, I would say that the SEC West does have one LSU or Boston College. Auburn is pretty bad.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe
take
not a
Auburn.
Boston
I'll
College,
take
but
Auburn
at least
against
a
Boston
Louisville.
College in Louisville.
I think against Louisville would be close. Against Boston College, I think they'd win. Boston College is kind of a joke. They lost to Virginia Tech.
Well, Boston College just beat Louisville.
Well, Louisville played with a backup quarterback, and they played really bad.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, appreciate the call. And
thank you for your time, Mark.
Give us a call anytime, of course. Good stuff.
Yep. I'm going to enjoy this weekend.
You too. David Knight, I think it would be interesting if college football recruiting classes were graded on filling positional need like the NFL draft. It would be a tall order, but interesting. Yeah, I get your point. All right. Tim, what's going on tonight? Tim, I don't think we can hear you. Nothing. Not hearing you. Don't know what's going on. I don't think it's on our end. While you're fixing that, we'll bring on Michael at the same time. Michael wasn't listening to my edict that we were only taking 2 more calls, apparently. Michael, what's going on?
Hey, when you said that, I thought you was going to take 2 more callers. I didn't know you was counting the previous caller. Otherwise, I wouldn't even bother doing it, Mark. Sorry.
Well, I said that before. I said that before that call. I said that like how many minutes ago? But that's fine. What you got?
What's up, Mark? What's up, Michael?
Anyway, not much. I can wait if you want to go ahead, Tim.
No, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask you, just that you guys talk about bowl games and stuff like that. If Purdue ends up maybe like 10-2 and gets to the Big Ten championship like that, yeah, maybe they give Ohio a run or Michigan a good game and stuff like that, but end up losing. Is it possible they just make a New Year's Six bowl or maybe make it to Pasadena to the Rose Bowl?
Sure. Yeah, if they're 10-2 and they went to the Big Ten championship game, yeah, it's possible.
But who do you, I mean, what's more likely to the Rose Bowl or maybe either 6? And if they do year 6, I'm trying
it's a little difficult to hear what you're spitting out there, Michael. You're just breaking up all over the place. But basically, I think it's Purdue is going 10-2. Are they going to a New Year's Six bowl? Or are they going to the Rose Bowl? Probably. You know, you'd have to lay out the entire landscape of the country for me to determine that. If you go to a Big Ten championship game out of the Big Ten Western Division, obviously you're not considered as good as and highly ranked as the other teams in the Big Ten Eastern Division. That's why Ohio State was selected this past year, way over Iowa, et cetera, et cetera. We could go through the years and we could see that play out. So, but if they go 10-2, sure, they've got a chance to be selected. Anything else, sir? All right, Michael. Thanks for calling. We appreciate it. Unfortunately, couldn't hear Michael too well. What's going on, Tim?
Oh, not much. Just had to call and say that I think we've gone through this a billion times, but might make it 1,000,000,001. The one that really made sense was the 8 team, really. But once they found out how much money they can make on 12 and 16, that's all gone. And bowl games pretty much have been gone. Like you said, I mean, I think that the rest of the country really hated the Rose Bowl. And when they had their first chance to get rid of the Rose Bowl between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, they made sure they did that as part of the BCS system. I mean,
people still love the Rose Bowl, though. And you look at the TV ratings last year, the Rose Bowl drew as big a number as the 2 playoff games, as the 2 semifinal games.
I'm talking more like envy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Absolutely. You're right. Yeah. The rest of the country, meaning not fans, meaning conferences. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's one thing. And then I want to give a quick reminder from a fan and a fan base that thought we were going to be a dynasty forever to J-Dub. Now, listen, Alabama's awesome. Your coach has done what no one else has done, really, you know? But you got to remember one thing. This stuff is cyclical. And if you're going to pontificate from on high that, you know, Alabama this, Alabama that, remember that it changes very fast. And it might change with, I don't know, maybe one coach. And it does happen. Some programs are able to survive, make a good hire, and keep thriving, right? Kind of like Ohio State has done. But, you know, at the same time, Mark, Ohio State hasn't been on that Alabama level. But even when you get to that Alabama level, it just takes one hire. And I would say, and
from a record standpoint, Ohio State has.
But
they have just as good a record as Alabama does. They have not been fortunate enough to be selected for the playoff, and to Alabama's credit, they have pulled through in playoff and in championship opportunities. Yes, I'm not putting Ohio State on Alabama's level. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying from a winning percentage standpoint, it's almost negligible.
Yeah, and that is true. But I mean, I'm talking about, you don't really know how good your team is until you get to the old days. So you got to that bowl game, right? And you played the top 10 big guys at the end of the season. You know, you can go and run through. Like I remember USC broke my heart when I was young. I remember it. We were, I think we were undefeated, and then we went into that Notre Dame game against Tony Rice, and then lost. I mean, we thought we were the greatest team in the world. We were a good team, but I think we ended up losing again that year. I'm trying to remember. I was young, but I think we lost another game, maybe Michigan State. I can't remember. I really can't remember.
Yeah, that's like 88
or
89. There was a 1-2 Notre Dame USC game.
Yeah, that was 88. That's with Roddy Pete and Tony Rice.
Yes, and then Michigan beat USC in the Rose Bowl.
It was Michigan. Okay.
Yeah.
So you think you have the greatest thing? You got a great record, and you know those Larry Smith teams had great records, and he went to like 3 straight Rose Bowls, but I think he won one of them. You know, so you could have that great record, and then you kind of sometimes you kind of get exposed. But the bigger picture, the big point is the question I want to ask you is how much do you think? Which conference do you think the NIL hurts the most in the grand scheme of things? I might be leading the question here, but it's what I've been thinking about and talking about for quite a while.
So here's my thought about NIL, and this may be a simplistic way to look at it, but I've got to think that the same schools that had the boosters and the money around the program to build all the fancy facilities and everything that went along with that, and whatever money was handed to players and all that pre-NIL, it only makes sense that those are the same programs that have the big money boosters to build collectives. Now, the correlation isn't going to be exact with every team in every conference, but I would think generally that's the rule. But then there would be some that are going to take advantage of NIL better than others. We've heard that Louisville's doing well. We've heard Nebraska's doing well. And then maybe there's some blue bloods that don't quite have that capacity. And maybe, I don't know, Alabama's not the richest state in America. Maybe there are a few blue bloods that are going to be challenged by NIL more than just maintaining their program prior to NIL. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't come down to how much money, the booster thing. Because I mean, USC is only behind Stanford for the most billionaires in the FBS, but most of those billionaires don't give a crap about college football.
Well, see, that's the thing. Yeah,
it doesn't really matter. But what I'm thinking is like when you have a program that's just kicking ass because you've stockpiled talent, like Alabama has done.
Yep.
And a lot of the SEC schools have done. A lot of these kids are going to stay home if they can also make money. I'll let that Barb stay there. Also make money by staying home. Nowadays with NIL, and it's going to flatten out. You're not going to have the days of having like tons of players.
This graphic's not right, but anyway, keep going.
Well, Texas A&M. We look at Texas A&M. They spent all their money on one class, right? And look where they are. All that money they spent, and look what A&M is doing right now. So I mean, it's not going to be. I don't think it's about having one school that can have NIL and buy a bunch of players. I think the issue is that I think the players are going to be more evenly spread out now, and I don't think that they're going to all be going to like a couple of conferences. I think that now local kids are going to take the money and go other places. So I think it hurts programs that in the past have done it with winning on the field and having great tradition. But also now people can make money at home. And smaller schools, like you brought up Louisville. Louisville's one of the ones I've been talking about because there's like 5 or 6, I think 5 guys from St. John Bosco going to Louisville of all places. So no offense. Austin, by the way, great knucklehead out there. I saw your comment in the Discord. You guys make sure you join Discord. We're going to have fun this weekend as well. But Austin, I saw your comment earlier.
I'm discounting this. Hang on just a second. 216 to. Anyway, that graphic's not right. Anyway, I want to. You got anything else, Tim?
No.
This comment by Ralph in and of itself is going to keep me on here for an extra 5 minutes. Just discounting this because that can't be right.
Yeah. Anyway, the playoff is going to be a mess. Playoff should have possibly, now that we've seen that the conferences are contracting, probably should have stayed at 4. At the end of the day, I think 4 would. Funny, we were complaining. So there were 5 P5 school conferences. Well,
Yep.
now I'm telling you, it's inevitable. It's going to be 4 or less coming up. So I think the 12 team and the bye is just going to be an absolute mess. And but once that money's made, it's never going to go back, and that's just a shame. So, all right, Mark.
All right, Tim.
Just want to remind Tide guy, because sometimes he can get a little bit up there with his like Alabama is gonna reign forever, and I just gotta tell him it's not.
No,
likely.
they won't. It just seems like it, but they won't.
It's a hell of a 12-year run, but
yeah,
USC in the 70s and Alabama in the 70s, and then they both went for a nap for for a while. So I mean, you got to remember that this thing is cyclical, and enjoy the ride while you have it. But be humble.
Right,
Jesus Christ, be humble. All right.
Thanks, Tim. See you. All right. You will get the entertainment value now for the next 5 minutes of me just adding up these numbers, because I do not believe that these are correct. Since 2000, Alabama has won 3, 10, 20, 24, 30, 40, 46, 53, 65, 79, 89, 101, 114, 125. Your numbers are way off. 25, 137, 151, 165, 178, 192, 203, 216, 216, and 13 is 229. Plus, what if they won this year? 235. What in the world? You're off by 100 wins. So first of all, is that since 2010? Maybe it's since 2010. If it's since 2010, then you might be right. But I don't think Ohio State. Well, they might have 19 more wins since Ohio State had that 6-win season. Maybe that's since 2010. 2010, Alabama would be at 10, 22, 35, 46, and 12 is 58. 58 and 14 is 72. 72 and 14 is 90. 72 and 14 is 86. 86 and 13, 99. 113 and 11 is 124. That's not even, I don't know what year you're using there, Ralph, but your numbers are way, way off. All right. Yes, the number, exactly, Dave. The numbers, I don't know where that came from. It's not even close. I can't even figure. It's not even 2010. It's not close. Yeah, Ohio State and Alabama have very close to the best record in the country, like the last 10 years, and Clemson's right there. They're 10-3 last year, kind of knocked them off a little bit. But yeah, they're within percentage points. And you got to put the winning percentage in there, not the number of wins anyway, because the COVID season, for one, knocks that off. Number two, when you keep going to the playoff, you have opportunities to win more games and go to conference championship games, etc. So there we go. David Knight says, so this is David Knight says since 2000, Ohio State number 2, Alabama number 5. I thought Ohio State had the best record since 2000. Who's got the best record since 2000? Maybe Oklahoma? Certainly not after this year. No, too many calls. Been here too long. Appreciate everybody being here, though. Thank you so much for that. I'm here all the time. That means Saturday night. We will see you after all the primetime games, 11:30 Eastern. In the meantime, when you shop Amazon, use the link. Check out all the videos that we post all the time, and we will see you Saturday night. Enjoy the games, and remember, we've got post-game all over the place.